Sometimes, because of different circumstances or realities or tragedies or abusive situations, a child internalizes certain messages about themselves. It's not your message, it's your perpetrator's message. The perpetrator is living inside of you, using your energy to destroy you, and you think it's you. The perpetrator went in, like in a virus. You know, what does a virus do? Coronavirus, you know what they do, right? They get through the bodyguards, they chop a cell, they create havoc in the cell, and now every cell replicates itself. So they use the power of replicating the cell to replicate the virus. And before you know it, your own cellular system suddenly replicated this virus millions, billions, trillions of times. The body is filled with a virus. You understand what the guy does? One cell, just one cell it needs. But now I have you, you'll replicate me. Emotionally too. The perpetrator lives in the person, uses his chiyus, contaminates the whole thought system, and creates anxiety that's incessant, or whatever it is, and the person thinks it's all them. It's nothing them. It's all the klippa that's using my chiyus against me. So this is a milchama atzuma. It's a real battle.
TheYeshiva.net.
So everything we discussed will explain the two birurim, the two forms of sublimation. Discussed ki habirur harishon levarer hatoiv min hara, dahainu sheyeh b'chinas bittul hayesh al kol panim ba'osin nitzutz hamizbarer. The first clarification or separation is toiv from ra. Remember, as a result of the breaking of the vessels, all the nitzutzas, the divine sparks, are mixed in with a lot of what you would call toxicity, poison, impurity, negativity, on many levels. Remember, it started with yesh. It started with imre isa chacham be'enov. But tikva l'ksil mimenu. But the fools get all their nurtures. Comes down, starts off Satan as l'shem shemayim. But the same Satan who's l'shem shemayim in a lower world is just jealous and wants to destroy and burn the Beis HaMikdash. So this is a fascinating concept. It starts off, the Satan doesn't start off as a Satan. The Satan starts off as a Alter Rebbe. You understand? He's a l'shem shemayim. Malach Hashem. Pnina, it's all l'shem shemayim. So why is he called a Satan? Because the l'shem shemayim sits with his yeshus over there. And that itself becomes the source. Tikva l'ksil mimenu, the fools will all get a lot of energy from it. As it evolves in a lower level. And that's the klal with Hishtalshlus. Something starts off in a very pristine way, but at the slightest distortion, when it comes down in more coarse levels, it becomes extremely distorted. A little scratch in the seed of a sapling, the seed of a tree, translates, right, into blemished fruits. You say it's a little tiny scratch, nothing happened, but it's a scratch in the seed. It affects the DNA, and now all the generations are affected, and sometimes the effect is very blatant, it's very, very coarse, very visible. So the first biddur is, he says that there should be what's called at least bittul hayesh. First, the spark was invested in something that was a yesh gomer. Yesh gomer means complete ego. When it was still mixed in with its own negativity, maintaining like pare liya oiri, the river is mine. Hagam sheyedeis Hashem. Doesn't mean he doesn't know that there's a God, but aim by bittul ratzin b'shum inyan. But there's no ability to be mevatel the ratzin. There's no ability to be able to see the bigger picture and submit and surrender to the truth. V'lachet mitzidim ha'ayin sadam liYisrael. And this is the source of anti-Semitism spiritually. You have ayin sarim, you have 70 spiritual guardian angels responsible for the 70 nations. And they oppress the Jewish people. Hagam sheyodim chshivusam b'nei Hashem. The ayin sarim are spiritual. They know the holiness and the prominence of Am Yisrael. They know their prominence in the eyes of Hashem. The Zohar says, "Sha'omrim la samachmem." They tell the samachmem, which is the Malach of Esav, Yirei boishas, bereshis. The word bereshis has many configurations. One of them is Yirei boishas. Be afraid, have awe and shame. Yirei boishas, have a fear that comes from busha, from shame. Yirei boishas mekutshabrichu u'shchinte. Can't you have a little busha and a little yira from Hashem and the Shechina? Alpha b'keinim oisim shalahem. They don't care. They don't care. Umachnisa machshavas ra'is b'melech. Their Indian is to put negative thoughts into the king. V'sadim lahatzir liyisrael. The way it's translated is, it's interesting how he defines it. These ayin sadim, they put thoughts into the king of the country and into his ministers to oppress the Jewish people. The king didn't get these thoughts from anywhere. Like it says in the Megillah, Machshavas Haman asher chishav al haYehudim. Alter Rebbe teaches in Torah that Haman puts in machshavas into people. Machshavas Haman asher chishav al haYehudim usually means Haman's plans. So in Torah the Baal HaTanya says Machshavas Haman asher chishav al haYehudim. Haman puts in machshavas into people. You have to know when thoughts are coming from Haman. You have to know. It's thoughts coming from Haman. Don't take it so seriously. Don't internalize them. So he says, these ayin sarim, because they have this yeshus. What does yeshus mean? Yeshus means you could know there's a truth, but it doesn't affect me, doesn't transform me. I remain separate. There's like a disconnect between information and internalization. There's no alignment, there's no connection, there's no internalization. You could know a truth, nothing to do with me. So the ayin sadim know, but because be'etzem they're a yesh, there's no bittul ratzon, so they have the audacity, the chutzpah, to take thoughts and put it into the king, whoever is the king of the country, or the son, the physical. He's now talking about the physical king, the monarch, and the sadim lahatzu liyisrael, to oppress the Jewish people. Most of the Nesias of the Tzemach Tzedek was under Nicholas the First. So Rasha Merusha. The whole Gzeir of the Kantonistan, the Kantonistan was Nikolai the First. Most of his Nesias in Russia was under Nicholas, till Nicholas died in the 1850s. He was one of the worst. He was horrible. He hated Jews. He hated people. He hated Jews. When he was a very cruel person, Nikolai. The Gzeir of the Kantonistan, all the children have to go to the army for 25 years. They had a quota, they would kidnap kids. It was horrific. It was almost for 30 years, from the 1820s till the 1850s. This was mostly the reign of the Nesias of the Tzemach Tzedek, the Mittler Rebbe and the Tzemach Tzedek. So in any case, when the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya, was taken to prison in 1798, he was taken to prison, very serious. It was a capital crime, supposedly, that he was trying to overthrow the Tsar. This is Paul. So Nikolai the First, was a kid. And Alter Rebbe was in a prison in St. Petersburg that was made especially for political treason and high-level criminals. It's like Alcatraz. You can't get there only through water. I was there in Petersburg. It's a fortress. You can't get there without water. So there's no way to escape. You need a boat. Like Alcatraz they have for. So Nicholas was a kid, and the prisoners were allowed to go out in the courtyards to take a walk, and he liked to torture them. Nicholas, he was in St. Petersburg. He was, royalty. So he had this dog, this vicious dog that he would send on the prisoners, and he controlled the dog to scare the living daylights out of them, because it was a vicious dog that can maul you, that can kill you. So they say that the Alter Rebbe was once taking a walk in prison in the outside, and Nicholas was playing there, and he decided this is a good person to torture. So he started to send the dog to the Baal HaTanya. And the Alter Rebbe, you could see in the picture his eyes. So he picked up his head, and he looked straight into Nicholas's face. evil can't deal with real Kedusha. He can't look back at you. You know what I mean? It doesn't have that power. Alter Rebbe's eyes looked at Nicholas, he stared at him, and he froze for a moment. He froze. But Tzemach Tzedek said, we would never understand the rishus of Nicholas if not for that look of the Alter Rebbe. The gaze of the Alter Rebbe, it dulled his evil a little bit. It broke his clip. It put an epis a little sensitivity. The chutzpah was compromised a little bit. the gaze. He was zoicha. Nicholas was zoicha. Tzaddik looked at him. He says, imagine what he would have been without it. The chutzpah was pashat infinite. I'm bringing out the nekuda here. He's not speaking about a theoretical issue when he speaks about malachim, that the Sodom put in machshavas to oppress Jews. Unfortunately, they lived in this reality. The ayil machshavta, he brings in thoughts. But there's all its sparks of Kedusha. Everything gets its life from Hashem. So when the spark comes up and there's a bittul hayesh, the yesh can surrender. Zeu inyan abirur arish. That's the first bitter. V'hainu aydei shem ban dafka. And this is access through the name Ban, right? 52, as we spoke b'gematria be'ema. Shemimenu nimshach habittul gam berichuk l'matamat. The bittul can reach even that which is very distant and low. Aval hu bittul namach, kaleimer bittul hayesh levat. It's still a lower level of bittul, because it's bittul hayesh. V'zau shekos, v'zau soy. This is the secret. We say in Eishes Chayil, v'atitein teref lebeisa. V'tokam boid laila. She wakes up in the middle of the night, right? The Eishes Chayil miyimtza. She wakes up in the middle of the night to make sure that her house has teref, pray, what to eat. So there's a secret in this. What's the secret? Yeridas hashchina levada berurim. The Eishes Chayil refers to the Shechina. The spouse kevayachal of Hashem is called the Shechina. The Shechina goes down. The Shechina comes with the V'shachanti. Shechina is Malchus. It goes vatakam ba'id laila. It goes out into the darkness of the night. Vatitin teref, to bring back the teref. What's the teref? The prey. That's all the nitzutzas that fell everywhere that you have to bring out. Teref is reish pei tes 289, because it says in Kabbalah there's reish pei ches nitzutzin. There's 288 sparks that fell from Tayu. Va'aretz oisa soyu v'voyu v'ruach elokim mirachefes. So it's brought mirachefes is reish pei ches meis. There's 288 nitzutzes that meis. Vayimloich vayamas. What's that meis? Not that it's dead, it fell down. So reish pei tes is reish pei ches with the koilel, the whole picture. Vatitin teref levesa. Yiridas hashchina levada berurim. And that's always through Shem Ban. That's why Eliyahu Navi, even his guf became refined. That's the first level of bittul. The readiness of the yesh to be able to listen, to be able to hear something higher, to be able to sense something edel. There's an expression, der was is grabu nidirik, hert nicht an der eigene grabkeit und nidirikkeit. Somebody who's coarse and lowly doesn't sense their own coarseness and lowliness, because they're so coarse and lowly. So the first stage of healing, the first stage of cleansing, the first stage of bidur is what? He says it's a bittul namach, it's still a lower level of bittul, but the openness that the nitzutz emerges, there could be some of the bittul of the yesh, of the ego. And that's the first level, the feminine waters going up. And then there's the second bidur. Second bidur is already not bittul hayesh. Then there's a flow of godliness that shines on the nitzutz, min shem ma, from the name of ma. We remember there's shem ma and shem ban. Shehu bitul ha'amiti, k'moy shehu kamei mamish the ein oid. This is already the bitul ha'amiti, the way it's from Hashem's perspective that ein oid mulvadei, everything is oneness. In the first level, there's also a bitul because it's bitul hayesh. The yesh is bottle. But there could still be a sense of separateness. And then there's the second bittul, the bittul hamiti, This is not the bittul namuch. This is the deeper bittul. For this, you need a flow from above, like the Mayan Duchrin, the masculine waters. And this is transformative. V'zo hanikra Mayan Duchrin shemevarer Mayan Nukvin birur sheni. This is the second birur. There's the first birur of the feminine waters coming up, which is huge, because essentially that's the transformation from a place of darkness to a place of openness. But then there's the edele bittul. The first bittul reaches much lower. It's much more powerful. It reaches much lower. The second bittul reaches much deeper. And that's the chiluk of Eliyahu, Hanavi, and Moshe. Eliyahu's bittul reached much lower, so his guf was transformed. He didn't have to be buried. Moshe Rabbeinu's bittul reached deeper. V'nachnu ma. V'nachnu ma. Shchina medaberes b'tach. Liyas beigam kem bittul zeh. V'zel b'chachma koyach ma is b'nidun. That's what it says in Zohar. The birur comes from chach. What's chachma? Koyach ma. The power of what? That's the complete dveikus, to be able to experience life the way it's from Hashem's perspective. Kula kamei kaloi choshev einoid mamash. Those are the two birurim, the birur of Malchus, man, and then the birur of Chachma mat, which is a summation of the nekudas that he spoke about in the last seif. These are the two birurim. V'hinei mepnei shabirurim shamalchus mevareres ulahafrid hatoiv min hara hagamur. Now, since the birurim, again, birurim means separation, clarification, dissection, cleansing, healing. All birur is a form of healing. What's healing? Healing is extricating, right? The goodness from the disease, not allowing the nitzots to fuel dysfunction. Separating yourself from toxicity, right? Not to rely on the toxicity, you say, to give oxygen. To be able to, as long as the nitzutz is involved, it becomes a cholent. It's mu'urav toivera. It's a very unhealthy place. Just what we have it in, we understand it with people and with emotions, right? A person could be enmeshed and entangled in things, and it sucks out your energy, and it's using your energy. It's using kedusha. It's always using kedusha, because that's the chiyos, that's the source of life. So that's the first step. So he says it's lahafrid hatoiv min hara hagamor. This is already the front lines of battle. Valkein, therefore, hamavarer muchnach leslabish b'hamizbarer. In the first birur, the mevarer has to enclose itself in the mizbarer. Now, those are big words. I can't sit in the ivory tower and say, "Hey, nitzutz, come out." That's because then it's not mixed. If it's really mixed in, there's enmeshment. When something is entangled with something, you got to go in and untangle it. You have to meet it where it is. You have to meet it where it is in its terms, because that's where the issue is. In a higher plane of reality, we have no issue. Right? You can run a company from a joystick. You sit in your bedroom. I mean, maybe with Corona, people do that today. You sit with a joystick and you run your company. Today they fight wars with drones and everything. But in ancient wars, certainly in this time, and even today, certain types of wars, right? I got to go there. When Israel has to deal with the Gaza terrorists, because they're so sensitive not to hurt, children and families, at least they try very hard. So what do they have to do? They go from alley to alley, from house to house. You're going in. If you're throwing a bomb from the heavens, if you're fighting through a drone, through an F-16, through missiles, then you don't have to be there. But you need to untangle the nitzuts. You have to untangle the nitzuts. And the nitzuts is wrapped in. It's wrapped and cuddled and embraced and caressed and manipulated by all types of toxicity and dysfunctionality. So he says the mevarer needs to go into the mizbarer. I have to be able to confront the thing that needs to be mevurer. The mevarer, the healer, it's like the lifeguard, wants to schlep somebody out of the sea, of the swimming pool. I can't sit on the chair and say, "Get out of the water." If he can get out of the water, he wouldn't be screaming. He wouldn't need me. The problem is he can't get out of the water because the water took hold of him, unfortunately. The undercurrent swept him away, Khalila. So what does the lifeguard have to do? He has to jump in. He has to go into the danger zone. And that's why if he doesn't know what he's doing, Khalila, he could be swept away. You have to have the right tools. How do you go into a danger zone and come out. When they were kids were stuck then in Thailand, you remember, in the caves in Thailand, right? They sent down experts. You can't just tell them, come out. We're stuck under the earth. That's our problem. So you have to come down and show me the way out. But if you're coming down, you better have a good flashlight and you better know what you're doing. Because if not, I'll schlep you down with me. That's what happens in the first bidder. The second bidder is a whole different type of bidder. So this makes us understand that this is an insane and intense descent. You need it for her, for Malchus. To go down. And not just go down, but lehislabish. Lehislabish means to get dressed up. To put on the garments of B'ri Yitzhak. What does it mean to go down? Go down doesn't just mean you go down for a visit. Go down means I take go down. So I have to put on your levushim. It's like Reb Nachman of Breslov's story with the prince under the table. You know the Maisa, yeah. Prince, it's a Chaim, he's a prince, right? Hey, he's a chicken, a rooster. So everybody tried to heal him. What they all say, get out of the table, come out. We have a beautiful meal here. What are you eating? Seeds under the table. Why didn't it help? Because if I'm a chicken, I'm not interested in joining your meal. I'm a chicken now. That's what people don't understand in healing. If I'm a chicken, the fact that you know that I'm not a chicken doesn't help me. I don't know that I'm not a chicken. So you have to become a chicken. In that case, he had to take off his clothes and he has to live like a chicken. That's called putting on the levushim. That's not a simple avodah. Putting on the levushim of the one that you want to help. You know how hard that is? That means you have to take off your own levushim. You have to take off your own garments. If I come with my bekisha and my streimel, yeah, and my spodek, and my beautiful tie, and my talis with a big crown, and I say, come! I have to take everything off, and I have to put on your garments. So there's a kinship. So I'm in your space, and now there can be help. Verstehst? That's not so simple. Sepasst nicht. I should put on your clothes. You put on my clothes. Why should I put on your clothes? So he says, now you understand the Yerid of Malchus. It's all to be mevarer, but to be mevarer, it's not that you're faking it. I'm putting on your clothes so you should think I'm your friend. It means I'm relating. We're not talking here physical clothes. We're talking here mental clothes, emotional clothes. That's why there's no healing that's powerful without real empathy. What's empathy? Empathy means I put on your levushim. Yeah. I put on your levushim. Putting levushim means I have to put on your glasses. I have to see things from your perspective. I have to feel it. Even though I'm not from here, I'm coming to help. I want to help. But in order to help a case of entanglement, there's entanglement. You're stuck. That entanglement means stuck. That's what entanglement means. So how do you get something that's stuck out? You have to see where it's stuck. How do I see where it's stuck if I'm in a beautiful world? And I say, come on, wake up and get over your Meshagasan. Yeah, because he would love to get up and forget his Meshagasan. It's called I'm stuck and I don't even know the word stuck. Because if I would know that I'm stuck and I would see the stuckness, I wouldn't be so stuck. This is a very, very profound idea in emotional connection. It's true especially with parents, with parents and children, with friends, with students, with clients, of course, and generally with people. It's one of the harder things to put on the levushim of the other. The son of the Tzemach Tzedek was the Rebbe Maharash, Reb Shmuel. I mentioned him yesterday. So he would have yichidus. People would come to see him. He lived in Lubavitch in Belarus. He passed away Tafresh Mem Gimel, 1882. So he had a gabbai, a mashamish, a gabbai. So once in the middle of yichidus, the Rebbe Marash, the fourth Lubavitch Rebbe, would change his clothes very often. He would take off his clothes and send it and ask for new, and then between people. physically he would change his clothes. He had a chalat, whatever he had, and so once the Gabbai was walking out with the clothes, and it was wet. So he's talking, he said, "Was schwitzt der Rebbe also? Was schwitzt der also?" It's a nice room. It's a comfortable room. Reminds me of another story I'll tell you in a moment. Was schwitzt der also? So the Rebbe Marash told him, so what he said, a Yid kommt herein zu mir, a Jew comes into me to share with me something. If I'm wearing my own garments, I can't understand his dilemma. I don't have this dilemma. Darf ich herabnehmen, darf ich austan meine levushim. So I have to take off my garments and put on his, so I can understand what he's saying. Now he finished, I have to give him advice. To give him advice, I can't be wearing his garments because he's the one who's stuck. So now I have to remove his garments and put on my garments. I can give him advice. Now he asks another question. So I have to take off my garments and put on again his garments. And if a person asks 5, 10 questions, I keep on taking off and putting on garments. And with a few people, I could be doing it dozens and hundreds of times. And then he looked at him and he said, if this is true, when you change your physical garments hundreds of times, you sweat. When you do it fast, on and off, how much more so is it when you're changing spiritual garments? That's the idea. I need to put on your levushim in order to be able to experience what you're saying. I'll say intellectually I can understand it, but you can't heal people intellectually. Healing is a process of birur, and birur is a process of connection. The second story I wanted to tell you is Derech. Sometimes people don't understand. He said, "What's schwitzt? What is he sweating?" He's sitting in a nice chair in a comfortable room. What is he sweating? When you don't have a sensitivity to deeper dynamics, you're sitting on a chair in a nice room. What is he sweating? He didn't understand what he's going through inside. So it was once by the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the HIJACKS, he would cry a lot by Tkiyah Shofar. So it was once Rosh Hashanah in New York, and he was sobbing. So there was a Yid there from a certain country. He didn't, let's put it this way, he was more of a concrete type of person. So he says, "Ich verstehe nicht. Was weint er? Hat a schöne Weib, hat schöne Kinder, hat a feine Chsidim, was weint er? He has a beautiful wife, he has nice children, he has wonderful Chsidim. What is he crying so much? So nicht so gefährlich." So this guy wanted to know, was schwitzt er? Was schwitzt er? And by the way, the stories that the Rebbe Marash told him that he can't work there anymore. He can't work there anymore in that capacity. Because he felt that he was not the person who's bringing in people, if he has no understanding, so he I don't know if he gave him another job or whatever, but even though he's just the mailman, he's just the gabbai, but it's important because somebody comes in, you know, how you see them, it creates a certain dynamic. So he wouldn't let him work there anymore. The Hest? Yeah. So that's the idea of going in. V'zehu soid miyut hayareach. That's the diminishment of the moon. The miyut hayareach is not God made a beautiful moon and then say, "Oh, I miscalculated. Oh, I already made this song. What was I thinking?" The miyut hayareach is this whole inyan. The levana represents the light that goes down into the places that need healing. That light becomes diminished, not because it's essentially diminished, but because it needs to go into diminished places. And if I don't diminish my light to go into diminished places, I can't go in. Ach inyan habgimu. Why does the Zohar call it Begimu, the blemish of the moon? The Zohar doesn't just say the moon is diminished. The moon is not the sun. It's smaller than the sun, doesn't have its own light. The orbit causes it to get diminished, to wax, wane, disappear. But the Zohar has the lashon Begimu. Begimu is a begam, a blemish. It's not a blemish. The moon is a very nice little creature. He's not blemished. He's just different. He's not the sunshine. This tissue box is also not the sun. It's not blemished. It's a very nice tissue box. What's the begimu desada? It says, who's soit kamus? This is already a soit kamus. Soit kamus means an absolute secret. But the Tzemach Tzedek here is going to be Megala, the secret. Why does he call it a secret if he's going to tell you what it is? A secret doesn't mean that nobody knows it. A secret, a real secret, even if everybody knows it, it's still a secret. You understand? It's still a secret. It's a secret be'etzem. It's a Seit Kamas. It's not something that's so tangible, that's out in the open. It requires different kalim, different instruments to be able to relate to it. Because he calls it a Seit Kamas, and then he's going to say what it is. So they used to say in Yiddish, Asad for ganz brod. It's a secret in the whole Monsey. It's a secret for the whole borough park. Asad and ganz brod. So it's not such a secret. A secret means it's be'etzem a secret. It's be'etzem a very, very edel and subtle inyan. It's a secretive thing. It's intimate. It's an intimate reality. Kehine inyan birur is that this birur that we're talking about, hareyu milchama atzuma im aklipus. You're talking about a real battle. And not just a real battle, milchama atzuma. Milchama atzuma means an intense battle. Im haklipus, with all the shells and all the husks. Lahoitzi mehem chiyusam, to take out the life force, which is all kedusha, that's feeding them, and they're feeding off it. Sometimes in a person's life we have it. When a person is very sensitive, they know this. Their light is trapped by all types of dibuks and klippas, and you have to go to battle. Go to battle to defeat the shells, the husks, that are literally feeding off this person, and stuck in a system and paralyzing him and using his energy. It's like chas v'shalom, those illnesses in the body, that they use the very chiyus, the very life force of the body to destroy it. And you have to literally get rid of these klippas, and it's a milchama atzuma. He's using spiritual language, but the language is extremely applicable in many, many situations. It's even understood emotionally and psychologically. Sometimes, because of different circumstances or realities or tragedies or abusive situations, a child internalizes certain messages about themselves. It's not your message, it's your perpetrator's message. The perpetrator is living inside of you, using your energy to destroy you, and you think it's you. You understood what I just said? The perpetrator went in, like in a virus. What does a virus do? Coronavirus, you know what they do, right? They get through the bodyguards, they chop a cell, they create havoc in the cell, and now every cell replicates itself. So they use the power of replicating the cell to replicate the virus. And before you know it, your own cellular system suddenly replicated this virus millions, billions, trillions of times. The body is filled with a virus. You understand what the guy does? The cells are very good bodyguards. Hashem created gewaldige shmira, the shoymrim, a lot of shoym, a big police force. But the virus is brilliant. That's klippa too. And it penetrates. Boom, and it got one cell, just one cell it needs. But now I have you. You'll replicate me. Emotionally too. The perpetrator lives in the person, uses his chiyus, contaminates the whole thought system, and creates anxiety that's not incessant, or whatever it is, and the person thinks it's all them. It's nothing them. It's all the klippa that's using my chiyus against me. So this is a milchama atzuma. It's a real battle. You have to understand why they fight. The moment you take out the good from them, you know what happens to them? They're dead. One of the Svardim of the Arizal is Sefer HaGilgulim. It's an incredible book about Gilgulim, reincarnations. The point is, there's no life in the world outside of divinity. V'atem hadveikim b'Hashem Elokeichem Chaim kol chamayim. Chai la'ad v'kayim l'netzach. Hashem Elokim emes. The one life force in the world is godliness. He's the source of life. So there's no life without it. So how does Klippa live? The answer is, it has Kedusha swallowed up inside of it that gives it chiyus. Every lie, like Rashi says, every lie needs a little emes to make it function. Every Klippa needs a little Kedusha so that it could function. all toxicity, all dysfunction, all brokenness. It has in it, it's feeding off sparks of life that I'm giving it unconsciously. And it knows the moment you separate, it loses its oxygen, it's dead. This is sometimes such a subconscious system that nobody knows this. It's not conscious, it's a soit kamos. It happens on secretive levels. It's not like I wake up one day at 10 years old and I decide this is what I'm going to do. It's a very deep process of entanglement. So they will fight. If somebody comes, just wants to give me a slap, I don't have to fight. But if somebody's coming to kill me, what am I going to do? I'm going to fight. I'll fight till my last breath. I got nothing, right? If you got nothing to lose. It's life or death. There's a different fight when you're fighting for a couple of dollars, although some people fight for that also till their last breath. You're fighting for a little covet, or you're fighting literally for your life. When you're fighting for your life, it's a different type of fight. You fight with your very life, because without this, what are you left with? So you have to understand the fight that the klippa puts up. And this fight doesn't necessarily mean physical. It's emotional, it's psychological, it's manipulative. They will find every excuse in the world not to let you heal. You understand what I'm saying? Every excuse in the world not to let you heal. And they're brilliant. Every justification, they'll find every Maimah Chazal, every Gemara. They'll use holy things, they'll find God. They'll use God not to let you heal. Because the moment there's clarity, the moment there's bitter, they're dead. You could call the Cheva Kadisha. Ulazois moisrim nafsha mamash. Lachtoif nitzutze kedusha al yidei kol tachbulus she'efsha. This is what he says. They have mesirus nefesh. They sacrifice themselves literally to grab all sparks of holiness through every possible scheme. Any scheme. I will use any scheme. I will be filthy and dirty. I will get down and dirty in order to survive. Any scheme I could use. If I need to use holy schemes, I'll use holy schemes. Not holy schemes, not holy schemes. To get the person, for example, to get the person to sin, to get the person into a mess, to get you into addiction, to get you into promiscuity, to get you into dysfunction. The moment I get you not sober, I have you, gesundheit, I'm good. And I reward you too. They reward you. Satisfaction for a few minutes, right? Numbing your pain, giving you some pleasure. They throw bones. You gotta give the person a bone. I can't just take and take and take and take. They give you a better paycheck, but you understand what's happening. But there's a devil that wants to live in me. That devil doesn't look like a devil. The devil could look like a choshev yid who's very sophisticated. But it's a devil, because it's klippa, it's tumah. And the devil is not giving up. So he'll do anything to make sure I have a hold on the holiness inside of me. The moment you can identify this, everything changes. But to identify this is not pashut. But he uses the word mesiras nefesh. It's a unique expression. Usually mesiras nefesh is a very Jewish holy term. He uses here the word mesiras nefesh on the klippa. They have mesiras nefesh.
That's their job.
They're doing well. They're doing well, yeah. They say there was once a big tzaddik and he woke up his child early to go to slichas. And the kid said, "Ich will schlafen." He wants to sleep. He says, "Lern sich von the Yetzer Hara." The Yetzer Hara was up right away to make sure you don't get up. He says, "Yeah, but the Yetzer Hara hat nicht kein Yetzer Hara." Nobody is telling my Yetzer Hara to go to sleep. My Yetzer Hara is a self-motivated man. Like the pasuk says in Mishlei, they don't scorn the ganev who steals in order to satiate his soul. The guy is hungry. Of course he shoplifts. He goes into the bakery, he steals. You know why? He's starving. They're starving. They're going to die. They will do anything. They will steal and loot and do anything. Certainly they're going to work even hard not to let you take what they already have. First of all, they want more constantly. But what they already have? I'm going to go to war to get more and more because I always can use more oxygen and more energy. But what I already have, this I'm going to protect with every fiber of my being, every cell of my body. So the Klippa works with the mind, it works with the heart, it works with intellectualism, it works with analysis. If it needs to bring in Chassidus, it brings in Chassidus. If it needs Musar, it brings Musar, Hashkafa, Gemara, Halacha. Remember, we're talking about a sophisticated guy. Whatever you want, I'll give you. Happiness, serenity, you want psychology, I'll give you psychology. Just make sure that the toxicity lives. That's it. And that's why Malchus is called Eshes Chayil, a woman of valor. What's Chayil? Chayil is a soldier. Why is the woman called Eshes Chayil? True, women are soldiers, but he says a Chayil is somebody who goes to war. The feminine aspect of Hashem is Eshes, it's a Chayil. It says, the expression in Tanakh, Gibor Chayil, right? A warrior. It's called a Gibor Chayil. Eshes Chayil, this woman is a warrior. She's a warrior. She goes to places where it can get very bloody. Lilchoy milchemes Hashem, lahoitzi bilam mipiv. Mipiv, to take out, bilam is what's swallowed. Balam, what they swallowed up from the mouth. You got to bring it out. V'chol zine krava afkid biyada. It's an expression in Kabbalah. All the weapons for battle, Hashem put into her hands. You need to have every instrument of battle to go to battle. Because Malchus is the woman. Eshes Chayil. Malchus is the woman. Zeh Sharf. And this is a very real thing. It's a very real thing. Because when we spoke about real, we're talking about a Soit Kamus. I'm not talking about real that you see it with your eyes. Internally, it's this is not like some superstitious battle that's happening in some world and some angel could see the battle. That's also true. But we're talking here about sometimes battles that happen in people's brains. There's a word from the Baal Shem Tov. My son Mendel showed me a word from the Baal Shem Tov. Sometimes your whole Avodas Hashem is dealing with one machshava. Sometimes the whole Avodas Hashem is dealing with one machshava, with one thought. You would think, come on. My son was like, whoa, that's like the Baal Shem Tov. Sometimes the whole Avodah is to deal with one thought. Because that thought is lethal. It's literally that one machshava, but it's the most powerful machshava, and that's my Avodas Hashem. And you know what? The Klippas will let me do everything else as long as I don't let go of that thought. Everything else. Just make sure. What do they say? Don't sweat the small stuff. The Klipposa knows that. You got to know what to fight for, right? You got to choose. Klipposa chooses its battles. Sometimes, and you have to understand this. You want to daven with a minion? I'll let you daven with a minion. You want to learn? I'll let you learn. But this machshava is going to belong to me. We don't always realize this. I will use Judaism to protect me. You could do this, do that. It makes you fit. It works. But where the real nekuda of your disease lay, that I'm going to protect. It's scary as long as he doesn't reveal the secret. Once he reveals the secret, it's much less scary. It's scary to do it, to fight it, but it's much less scary because you have to realize it has nothing of its own. Everything is fake, nothing of its own. You understand? Its whole power is that I let it have power. I'm giving it everything. It's still scary. It's still scary. But it's scary only because of the emotional entanglement. Be'etzem, it has nothing of its own. There's no chayis outside of goodness. There's no truth outside of goodness. That's why evil doesn't have real eyes. It can't look you really in the eyes because it has nothing. You understand? You stare it down, it has nothing. It has pump. It has, what's the word? It's pompous. It has drama. It has fanfare. It has fireworks. It can also have a few $1 billion, which doesn't. Be'etzem it doesn't. I don't mean it doesn't have. It can have a lot and it can be very destructive. But bepnimius it doesn't have. When Nicholas met Alter Rebbe's eyes, there was no competition. This is real existence and this is fake existence. This is tumah. This is kedusha. There's no. The power is chitzonius. The power is manipulation. It's exploitation. It's like a Ponzi scheme. Ponzi schemes could be big. We all know of a guy who had a Ponzi scheme and stole $150 billion. How much? He also lost money in his Ponzi scheme. Baruch Hashem, he didn't have money to lose there. Huh? I also wasn't ripped off by him. Elie Wiesel, yeah, I know. He lost a lot of money. I think he lost, I asked my sister how she's doing. Her husband and her are Chabad Shluchim in Manhattan. So she said, when we came here, we started off with nothing, and we're still left with most of it. So the Nekuda is, it's a Ponzi scheme. It's a big one. And it can last for a long time, like Ponzi schemes. But be'etzem, you open up the pnimiyas, there's nothing there. It's all sheker. And on a spiritual level, this is what real trauma and brokenness is. What is it? What is it? It's like a dibuk takes over my system, so to speak. I'm talking, it's all within. Clip is within. Clip is not some angel from New Zealand or from the Congos who comes here. It's all inside. And sometimes it's a perpetrator who abused you, and his or her messages live inside of me, and that's how I'm thinking. And I think it's me thinking. It's not you thinking. It's a mazik. There's a mazik inside of you who stole the system and is responsible for the thought. It's called machshavas haman asher chishev ala Yehudim la'abdam. And it's destroying you. And the worst thing is you think it's all you. It's nothing to do with you. You know how much people carry this for their whole life? Thoughts of others that live in them, feeding off your imagination, your creativity, your brilliance, your purity, your goodness. They use you against you and you think it's all you. It becomes you. That's why you need this bidur. That's why bidur is so important. You must have this bidur. Malchus need the Eishes Chayil. She has instruments and you got to go to war. We don't like war. But here the war is essential. And by the way, I told you, sometimes the war is about one thought. We're not necessarily talking about a war that's physically bloody. And one needs a lot of guidance here, support. Because when I go to war, what am I fighting for? Am I feeding the enemy or am I fighting for myself? Sometimes the tools I'm using to fight the war are feeding my enemy. So one has to be very sensitive here. Because the entanglement is so deep, I already don't know. What does entanglement mean? I don't know what's good, I don't know what's evil. It's a mixture, it's craziness. That's the sheker of our world and the sheker that we see. I don't know who's good and who's evil. Everything is mixed. It's so mixed. The kedusha is klippet, the klippet is kedusha, meveis was tutzach. The moment there's clarity, the game is over. The show is over. But the reason the game could continue is because there's no clarity. That's clear. So the klippet could camouflage itself. The Alter Rebbe once said, "Was meinst du, Esav is gegangen mit grobe Häsen und a dicke Strick? Esav is gegangen mit a Streimel und a seidene Suppitze." You think Esav walked around with torn jeans like a grobe mensch? The Alter Rebbe said he walked with a Streimel and a seidene Kapotte, a silk Kapotte. His point was that the silk, I'm wearing a Kapotte, so hope I'm not Esav, but doesn't mean every person who wears a Kapotte is Esav. It just means that not every person, the kapote is not a raya that you're not Esav. Let's put it that way. So what's the nekuda? The nekuda is that the kapote here is a mashal. Kapotes are not dangerous, but it's camouflaged It could be camouflaged. And the person who was hurt doesn't believe it came from this source. Because how can such a Streimel and Zaydin Azupitza be so evil? Well, can't be. Can't be. So who's the crazy one? I'm the crazy one. So now the Klippe, you understand? Ratzachta v'gam yarashta. Eliyahu Hanavi told Achav, you murder, and then you inherit too. This is the words that come to me. You murder the kid, and then you take him over too. Mele, you killed him, now go away. Let him know that you murdered him. No, gam yarashta. Now you take over his brain too. He thinks you're the tzaddik and he's the rasha. You're the victim and he's the murderer. Yeah. This is all the diminishment of the moon, and we're soon going to see the blemish of the moon. This is the descent of Malchus that goes into places that are very difficult and challenging. Why? Because this is the only way you can defeat the Klippe. Yeah?
So in order to do Avodat Hashem, the Shem Shamayim, we have to get rid of the ego. But it's a big avodah. So should we even try before we do all those birurah?
Listen, always, this is a daily avodah. Every person according to their capacity. Every person according to their capacity.
That little blemish causes such evil. So maybe we shouldn't do it before we do it.
Listen, also we can't exaggerate. He's describing it in very, very grand terms, right? Every person deals with this in their own way. It could be in a miniature way, it could be in a big way. There's no mitzvah to turn it into a big monster. Sometimes it's a little small monster. But the point is that when Malchus goes down, this is what it has to face. Each person according to their own capacity. And I have to be able to be aware of these things, because when I'm aware of it, the moment you're aware of this process, it's already a whole different reality. The awareness now has to translate into internalization and inner work. But it always begins with awareness. Okay, we're going to stop here. And Be'ezer Hashem, we're going to continue Thursday morning, 7:45, okay? Everybody have a beautiful day. Hatzlacha d'kedei.
This class is brought to you by the yeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.